That's a big one, and it's tough to do. With a lot of it is like having good parts and having good parts availability and people and having some of that infrastructure on site. But really.
He was 5 years old the first time he sat behind the controls of a machine most adults will be nervous to touch. No toy trucks, no training wheels, just cold Alaskan dirt, a running engine, and a grandfather who believed the only way to learn mining was to actually do it. Today, that same boy is one of the most recognized names in reality television, a young man who has pulled tens of millions of dollars worth of gold out of the ground before most people his age have finished paying off a car loan. This is the story of Parker Schnabel, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a kid from a tiny Alaskan town built a life that looks nothing like anyone expected. Parker Russell Schnabel was born on July 22, 1994, in Haines, Alaska, a small coastal town tucked between mountains and water where the population barely reaches 2,000 people. It is not the kind of place that produces television stars. Winters are long and unforgiving, summers are short and intense. And if something breaks out there, you don't call a repair service, you fix it yourself or you go without. That environment shaped Parker long before cameras ever found him. His family had deep roots in mining. His grandfather, John Schnabel, ran the Big Nugget mine, and it was there that young Parker spent his summers, first watching, then helping, then eventually operating heavy equipment himself. While other kids his age were building sandcastles or playing outside after school, Parker was learning how dirt moves, how gold settles, and how a mining operation actually functions from the ground up. By his early teens, Parker wasn't just a curious grandson tagging along for fun. He was becoming genuinely useful on site, absorbing lessons in equipment operation, crew management, and the basic economics of mining that most people never think about unless it's their livelihood. His grandfather, John, was more than a family elder. In the mining world of the Yukon and Alaska, John Schnabel was a respected and somewhat legendary figure, someone other miners looked to for guidance. Growing up under that kind of mentorship gave Parker an education no classroom could offer. He wasn't memorizing facts from a textbook. He was living the trade every single day. Everything changed when Parker was still a teenager and the Discovery Channel came calling. Producers were putting together what would become Gold Rush, a documentary series following real mining crews as they tried to strike it rich in the unforgiving terrain of the Yukon and Alaska. Parker, still just a teenager at the time, stepped in front of cameras for the first time. Nobody expected much from him at first. He was young, quiet, and largely unknown outside his hometown. But it didn't take long for viewers and producers alike to realize there was something different about him. He wasn't performing for the camera. He was simply doing what he had always done, running equipment, making calls under pressure, and trying to keep an operation profitable in one of the harshest environments on Earth. That authenticity is exactly what turned him into one of the show's breakout figures. As Gold Rush grew into a hit, Parker's role on screen grew right alongside it. What started as a supporting storyline about a teenage miner became one of the central narratives of the entire series. Audiences watched him take on more responsibility season after season, eventually stepping fully into a leadership role after his grandfather's health began to decline. John Schnabel passed away in March of 2016, and with his passing, the weight of continuing the family's mining legacy landed squarely on Parker's shoulders. It was an emotional transition. Losing a mentor and grandfather is difficult under any circumstances, but doing it while also being expected to keep an entire operation running, on camera, in front of millions of viewers, added a layer of pressure most people never have to face. Rather than retreating from that pressure, Parker leaned into it. Instead of following the more conventional path of heading off to college like many of his peers, he made the decision to put everything into mining. He used funds that had been set aside for his education to invest in better equipment and expand operations. It was a bold and unconventional choice, the kind of decision that could have easily gone wrong. But over time, that investment paid off. His crews became more efficient, his gold hauls became more consistent, and his reputation within the industry grew far beyond what anyone expected from someone so young. One of the most talked about chapters in Parker's mining career involved his relationship with Tony Beats, another prominent figure in the gold rush world, and someone widely respected across the Klondike. Early on, Parker leased ground from Tony to expand his own operation beyond his family's original claims in Alaska. At first, the relationship had elements of mentorship, an experienced miner giving a determined young man a chance to prove himself on new ground. But as Parker's success grew and his ambitions expanded, the dynamic between the two shifted. What had once looked like guidance sometimes came across as friction, with both men publicly pushing back against each other over business terms and operational decisions. Their relationship became one of the more closely watched storylines on the show precisely because it wasn't scripted rivalry. It reflected the very real tension that can exist between two strong-willed people running competing operations in the same region. Parker's ambition eventually led him to one of the biggest and riskiest decisions of his career, the acquisition of Dominion Creek, a claim with a storied history and significant untapped potential still in the ground. Taking on a property of that scale meant taking on serious financial risk. Large purchases like this require consistent production just to break even, and mining is anything but predictable. Frozen ground, equipment failures, permitting delays, and unpredictable gold yields can turn a promising season into a stressful one almost overnight. Parker has been open about the fact that operations like Dominion Creek came with real financial pressure, and that some seasons tested him in ways viewers only got a small glimpse of on screen. What the show captures is often just a fraction of the actual stress involved in running a multi-million-dollar mining operation season after season. Despite those pressures, Parker has built a reputation as someone who doesn't back down when things get difficult. Colleagues and fellow miners in the industry have often pointed to his willingness to adapt strategy mid-season, bring in new equipment when something isn't working, and make hard calls quickly rather than waiting things out. That adaptability is part of why he has remained one of the most consistently successful figures in modern placer mining, even as many of his peers have struggled or exited the business entirely. Parker's relationship with the show and with other cast members hasn't always been smooth. His dynamic with fellow miner Todd Hoffman became one of the more well-known tensions of the earlier gold rush seasons. The two had very different approaches to running a mining operation and very different philosophies about risk, tradition, and how a crew should be managed. As Parker's results improved season after season, the contrast between the two operations became harder to ignore, and it added real tension to the show's dynamic. Todd eventually stepped away from Gold Rush, later returning with his own spin-off series. In interviews since then, he has spoken about how demanding the reality television environment can be, both professionally and personally, and how stepping back allowed him to refocus. Away from the mine site, Parker's personal life has occasionally made headlines, though he has generally kept those details more private than his business dealings. He has spoken publicly about relationships that didn't work out, often crediting the demanding nature of his career and lifestyle as a contributing factor. Balancing months of intense, remote field work with any kind of personal life is genuinely difficult, and Parker has acknowledged as much in interviews over the years. He has been candid that the itinerant nature of mining season, spending long stretches in remote camps far from normal routines, makes maintaining relationships uniquely challenging. What makes Parker's story compelling to so many viewers isn't just the gold or the risk. It's the contrast between his massive earning potential and his relatively grounded lifestyle. Multiple industry estimates place his net worth somewhere between $8 and $10 million, built primarily through years of successful mining seasons combined with his television income from Gold Rush and its spin-off series, Parker's Trail. That is a serious fortune for someone still in his 20s, especially one built largely through physical labor and calculated risk rather than inheritance or passive investment. And yet, by most accounts, Parker doesn't spend like someone chasing a flashy image. He has said in interviews that he isn't particularly interested in accumulating expensive possessions for their own sake. Instead, a large portion of what he earns gets reinvested directly back into his mining operations, funding new equipment, expanding claims, and covering the substantial overhead that comes with running a business in one of the most remote and expensive regions to operate in. Mining equipment isn't cheap. Fuel costs in remote Alaska and Yukon locations are high, and keeping a skilled crew paid and motivated through a short mining season requires real capital. For Parker, growing the business has always seemed to matter more than personal luxury. That said, he isn't without nice things. Over the years, he has owned a range of vehicles suited to both work and personal use, from rugged trucks built for mining terrain to more upscale options for life off-site. He has also invested in real estate, including property connected to his operations in Alaska. Reports about the specifics of his properties have varied, but the general picture that emerges is someone who prioritizes functional wealth, equipment, land, and operational capacity over the kind of visible luxury spending you might expect from someone with his level of income. Beyond mining and television, Parker has also branched into other ventures connected to his brand. He has launched merchandise lines tied to his name and his operation, giving fans a way to support him and feel connected to the show beyond just watching each week. He has also offered tours and experiences at some of his mining locations in Alaska, letting people get a small taste of the industry that shaped his entire life. These ventures represent a smart diversification for someone whose primary income source, gold mining, is inherently unpredictable from year to year. One of the things that has kept audiences invested in Parker's story for over a decade now is the fact that his success has never looked easy. Every big season has come with real setbacks, whether that's equipment breaking down at the worst possible moment, permitting issues eating into a short mining window, or simply the ground not producing the way projections suggested it would. Mining is not a business where hard work guarantees results. Luck, geology, weather, and timing all play enormous roles, and Parker has had to learn to manage those variables while also managing people, machinery, and enormous financial exposure, all while being filmed for a television audience that expects drama and payoff every single episode. That pressure has, by his own admission, taken a toll at times. Running any business is stressful. Running a mining operation with multi-million-dollar stakes, remote logistics, and a camera crew documenting every setback adds a layer most business owners never have to deal with. Parker has talked about how demanding that combination can be, both physically and mentally, especially during seasons where operations weren't going as planned. It's a side of the reality television world that doesn't always make it to air, since producers naturally lean toward the moments of triumph and dramatic confrontation rather than the quieter grind of a difficult season. Still, what has kept Parker at the center of the show for so many years isn't just the drama. It's the results. Season after season, he has consistently found ways to keep his operation profitable, expand his footprint in the region, and earn the respect of miners who have been in the business far longer than he has. That kind of consistency is rare in an industry known for boom and bust cycles, and it's a big part of why he's remained one of the most bankable personalities in the Gold Rush franchise for over a decade. Looking at where Parker Schnabel stands today, it's clear his story is still being written. He continues to expand his mining operations, take on new claims, and push into new territory both literally and in terms of his business ventures. Whether that means additional real estate, new merchandise opportunities, or simply another record-breaking season pulled from the ground, Parker's trajectory has consistently pointed upward, even when individual seasons have been rocky along the way. What makes his story resonate with so many people isn't really about the gold itself. It's about what he represents, someone who took an unconventional path, bet heavily on himself at an age when most people are still figuring out what they want to do with their lives, and built something real through consistent effort rather than shortcuts. He didn't inherit a finished business. He inherited an opportunity, a family trade, some equipment, and a tough environment, and he turned that into one of the most recognizable names in modern reality television and small-scale mining. For all the attention on net worth figures and equipment lists and property speculation, the core of Parker Schnabel's story remains fairly simple. A kid from a town of under 2,000 people learned a hard trade from his grandfather, took over that trade at an age when it probably shouldn't have been his to take over, and built it into something bigger through more than a decade of consistent, visible effort. The luxury, to whatever extent it exists, has always seemed secondary to the work itself, and that, more than any dollar figure, is probably the most accurate way to understand who Parker Schnabel actually is. If you enjoyed learning about Parker Schnabel's journey from a small Alaskan mining town to one of reality television's most recognized names, let us know what you think in the comments below, and subscribe for more stories about the people behind your favorite shows.